Professors, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. And let me just begin with you, Professor Ndombana. The UN inspectors have just been given the go-ahead to the areas around Damascus that are suspected to have been hit by chemical weapons. Would this mean that the Syrian government is relaxing its position on the international community?
Well, thank you for having me, Amarachi. Well, the Syrian government has been under quite serious pressure for quite a while now. And that's because many of the states that were supporting the Syrian government before seem to have been slowing down in terms of the moral support which they granted to Syria. And that's as a result of the casualties that have increased over the time since the war began, especially civilian casualties. So countries like China and Moscow, and Russia are beginning to, not that they have withdrawn their support, but also beginning to think along the lines of the United States and others at the Security Council in putting pressure on the Syrian government to do something to end the atrocities.
So it's like Syria is sort of reaching out to the rest of the world, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay, but Professor Allo, the attacks that happened on Wednesday in these areas in Damascus, it's been, well, almost a week now since those attacks took place. Would the UN inspectors still find any traces?
Yes. That's where the challenge for the UN inspectors will be, in the sense that the alleged culprit chemical agent that may have been used turns into gas very easily, into vapor, and therefore it's difficult to find it on the ground, unless they have access to some remnants of the canisters from which it came. It may be difficult. So they may have to end up doing forensic analysis on some of the dead. It may even involve exhuming some of the bodies in order to be able to take blood samples.
How easy would that be, exhuming the bodies, considering you have mostly Muslims in these areas who would already been buried? Yes.
This is where the challenge for the UN inspectors will be. That eventually I can see a request for, a country inspection for stockpiles, because it is being suspected. The fact that some chemical agent was used means that there must have been some stockpiles of it sitting in Syria. And we are not in doubt of that, because Syria indeed is not a state party to the Chemical Weapons Convention, the convention that bans the use of chemical weapons globally. And Syria, as well as North Korea, as far as we know, has refused to accede to that convention. And therefore, exactly. So therefore, we think that there may have been stockpiles. And that's why accessibility to this chemical agent, which is, a very toxic chemical, must have happened.
But the only gas the only weapon we've heard being mentioned so far is sarin gas. And so far, what we know, or what I've read, is that it is odorless. You probably wouldn't know you've been hit by it until you begin to experience certain symptoms. Could you explain that to us?
Yeah, indeed. Sarin is being implicated in this Syrian chemical weapons war. Sarin, as we know chemically, is a gas, is what we call fluoroorganophosphate, and turns into a gas very easily. Ordinarily, in its stable state, is a liquid. But because of its low boiling point, that is turning into gas very easily, particularly in hot climes, as it is in Syria. So even if it's a liquid ordinarily in Germany, where it's originally manufactured from, by the time it gets into Syria, it will be a gas, it will be a vapor. And that's why it kills very easily, because it's odorless, it does not have any smell, it does not have any color. You can't tell it if it's in the air. It does not. It's also tasteless. So even if it touches you on the tongue, you will not even know you're tasting anything, and therefore it becomes a very lethal weapon. Sarin, unfortunately, is not one of those agents that are easily detectable if it's been used. But there must be some basis on which we now find that sarin seems to be what's being...
But what would be the method of dissipating this gas in a community like that? if it is not, if you just mentioned the characteristics of the gas, so how would, I mean, if you saw, would you see certain people show up and then begin to fire something in the air?
Yeah, that is interesting. It's like, I think the closest corollary I can bring to the table is that of tear gas. The tear gas that the policemen carry in canisters to disperse riotous crowds and all that. The tear gas comes in a little canister. The nipple on the canister is removed and the gas gets to escape. The same thing with sarin. Sarin, upon manufacture, is stored in canisters and stockpiled, and therefore anybody who wants to use it will bring out the canister or bring out the bottle, opens it, and off it goes. And as it goes out, it just starts killing people because it's a fast killer. It's LD50, what we call LD50. That is, the minimum concentration to destroy is very, very, very low. In fact, a drop of sarin in this room or whatever room will destroy people within 200 meters of this room. So what we know of the characteristics of the gas, being a nerve gas, a toxicant, asphyxiant, as we also know it, it can be very debilitating, and that must have been what has happened in this Damascus scenario that we're talking about.
Professor Ndombana, the monitors, I think, will be probably going in a bit too late, wouldn't they? I mean, because it's not the first time you've had UN monitors in Syria. It was about a year ago that they showed up to determine whether there was really a civil war going on. And